This is 12 News Now. I'm Raymond Bakari. It's now known who's going to officially be on the ballot for a number of races throughout the state of Rhode Island. There are a bunch of key races that voters are going to be heading to the polls for in both the September primary and the November general election, like the U.S. Senate seat up this year, the race for Cranston mayor, General Assembly seats, etc. So with this, I thought it'd be a great idea to provide analysis on some of the key races that you're going to see on your ballots this year. Starting off with the U.S. Senate race, there are a total of 4 candidates who ended up turning in enough valid signatures, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. The 2 Democrats are Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who is seeking re-election for a 4th term, and Michael Costa. And then on the Republican side, State Rep Patricia Morgan, former House Minority Leader, ran for governor in 2018 as a Republican, and she's facing Raymond McKay in the Republican primary. So this is a federal race, so there's going to be a lot of national implications and a lot of national issues in the spotlight. Think of issues like the immigration, the economy, reproductive rights, and how aligned the candidates are with their major party's presidential nominees. So you'll likely hear if Whitehouse is tied to Biden, then you'll likely hear whoever the Republican nominee is, how tied they are to former President Trump. There's a lot of messiness in the Republican primary right now. There's a little bit of a divide, I'd like to say. Neither candidate between Morgan and McKay had the Republican Party's endorsement during their recent convention. Neither of them got a majority of the votes when that was done. So that shows that it's going to be one to look at in September. Latest polling had showed that Whitehouse is leading. This was a poll done by the Pell Center. He had a double-digit lead over the Republican candidate because we don't know who that candidate's going to be yet until the primary in September. Whitehouse also holds a big financial advantage. He currently has $3.7 million in his campaign account as of the latest fundraising quarter, but according to fundraising data by the Federal Elections Commission. Morgan has about $97,000 and McKay has about $16,000. So those are some factors to consider for the Senate race. Now moving on to the Cranston mayor race, there are a couple of mayoral races up in Warwick, Woonsocket, Cumberland, Pawtucket, but Cranston, state's second largest city. Everybody's talking about this one. This is between 3 candidates, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. The 1 Democrat is citywide councilman Robert Ferry, who used to be a Republican until he switched his affiliation in 2022. And then there are 2 Republicans, which is Cranston Mayor Ken Hopkins, who first won in 2020, and State Rep Barbara Ann Fenton Fung, who is the wife of former Cranston Mayor Alan Fung. And this race has been heated from the start. Fenton Fung has not been shy about her criticisms of Hopkins' time as mayor so far. She's accused him of adding more spending to the city's budget. She's accused him of constantly being on vacation and not working as much, among other things. Hopkins has hit back. He mentioned that the city wasn't in the best financial shape at the end of Alan Fung's time as mayor. And that's an interesting aspect to consider because Hopkins and Alan Fung used to be good friends before this primary started to take shape. Hopkins had supported Alan Fung during both of Alan Fung's gubernatorial runs as well as his run for Congress in 2022 in the 2nd Congressional District. So far, there's no public polling for this race. Fenton Fung, her campaign had an email blast sent out that said she was up by 3 in a poll done by Signal. I have since inquired about the results of that poll. We have not heard back yet about that, so there's no other polling results out there yet. Money-wise, the latest campaign finance reports have showed Fenton Fung outraised Hopkins in the first fundraising quarter, but Hopkins has more cash on hand. And then one other aspect to consider heading post-primary, because Hopkins and Fenton Fung's primary will be in September, but there'll still be a November election because Ferry is going to face whoever that nominee is. And with such a messy GOP primary similar to the Senate race, you have to consider how this is going to affect the general election. It might be something that could hurt the GOP nominee going out of that primary, and maybe it could increase Ferry's odds because he's not having to do as much campaigning against somebody in a primary, and instead he could just focus on general election mode. So now I want to shift to another couple of more local races. These are for General Assembly seats. There are a couple to keep in mind due to either it being a rematch, a former legislator eyeing their old seat, or just the seat being in a competitive district in general. One of them is House District 21. This seat is located in Warwick. State Rep Camille Vella-Wilkinson, a Democrat, had represented this seat for a couple of terms. She's not going to seek re-election due to her belief that state legislators should be term limited after 8 years, so she's not running again. An opponent that she had last time, Republican Marie Hopkins, she had created a close election result against Vella Wilkinson in 2022. It was decided by under 50 votes. Marie Hopkins is running again, and this is an open seat, so that's one of the aspects of why this one's one to look at. On the Democratic side, there's one Democrat who filed, Ward 4 Warwick City Councilman James McElroy, so that's one seat to look at. Another seat is House District 15. This is actually the seat that Fenton Fung represents currently in the State House, but is not seeking re-election for it to run for mayor. There are two candidates who filed for this seat as well, one Republican and one Democrat. The Republican is Chris Paplauskis, Ward 5 City Councilman in Cranston. He's term limited on the City Council. And then on the Democratic side, you have Maria Bucci, who actually ran against Ken Hopkins for mayor in 2020 in Cranston. She's also the chair of the Cranston Democratic City Committee. And with Cranston being such a political battleground this year, that I think by default would be one other seat to look at. And then another House seat I want to point out is House District 39. Like House District 21, this one also had a very close result in 2022. In fact, it was actually the closest General Assembly election last cycle. This is going to be between State Rep Megan Cotter, a Democrat, and former State Rep Justin Price, a Republican. These two candidates have run against each other 3 times in total, now counting this one. They ran against each other the first time in 2020. Price was the incumbent then. Price had won by 4%. In 2022, Cotter challenged Price again. This time, Cotter had prevailed. Price had faced controversy during his last term his latest terms as a state legislator due to a combination of him being in Washington, D.C. during the events that occurred on January 6, 2021, and his comments about what had happened during that day. He has said repeatedly that although he was in D.C. that day, he did not go into the Capitol, and I actually had broken the news that he was going to run again this election cycle, and he told me that he doesn't believe that that whole situation affected his candidacy in 2022. There was an independent who ran during the last time, Sean Camella, who ended up getting about 10% of the vote. Price attributed his loss to that candidate getting a sizable share of the vote. So that's going to be one to look at this time because it's not only a rematch, but a second rematch, a former legislator seeking their old seat, but it's also a district that has had close election results the last couple of election cycles. And then looking over to the state Senate, there's 2 races I want to point out. One is Senate District 28. This one's going to be one to look at for the September primary because it's only 5 Democrats who filed and turned in enough signatures. There were no Republicans or independents who filed to run for this seat. This seat is open because longtime state Senator Joshua Miller, a Democrat, is not seeking re-election this year. There are 5 Democrats who are running for this seat. Lamise Vargas, who is a City Council Vice President in Cranston, representing Ward 1. Melissa Cardin, who is the Executive Director for the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence. Darrell Brown, John F. Croak Jr., and Bernice Morris. Multi-candidate primaries typically are ones to look out for and could be harder to predict. Vargas, Cardin, and Brown might be the 3 candidates that might end up getting more of the attention out of the 5 that are currently running, so that's one to look out for in September, and open races, again, are always going to be competitive. Then Senate District 26, this is a general election one to look out for, also an open seat. Frank Lombardi, who's the state senator for the seat currently, is not seeking re-election this year. He told us when he decided that he wasn't going to run that he wants to spend more time with his family. This seat, also in Cranston, which not surprisingly is having a couple of elections on the radar for political analysts and voters that are going to be voting this year. So Senate District 26 for the open seat is going to have 1 Democrat and 1 Republican running. The Democrat is Cranston Police Major Todd Padalano, and the Republican is Jennifer Caputi. One more set of races I want to focus on for the end of this analysis is the Providence School Board elections. So this is the first time ever that voters in the city of Providence will be voting for members of the school board. It's always been mayor appointed. All 10 of the members of the school board would be appointed by the mayor. The reason why it's different now is because in 2022, so every 10 years, the city of Providence has a commission that looks at the city charter to look at any changes. One of the approved changes that ended up going to voters and was voted in favor of was to create what's called a hybrid school board. So instead of all 10 being appointed by the mayor, 5 are appointed by the mayor, and now 5 of them are going to be elected. For the 5 elected school board members, they are going to be in seats that are regionalized. So there's 5 regions: north, south, east, west, and central. They're about the size of 3 city council wards. We have an article on our website with the full breakdown of what wards are in each region, as well as every candidate who filed to run in each region. But I'm just going to highlight a couple of them because there are current members of the appointed school board that are running, like Tyrell Stevens, Knight Jean Mahingabo, Tony Atkin, and Michael Nina. They're all currently on the school board and they're running for elected seats. One person who won't be running that's on the current school board is current school board President Erlen Rogel. He's not going to be running for a seat, and he's told me he's going to be contemplating if he'll be seeking an appointment for one of the 5 appointed seats. There are going to be some familiar names in Providence politics that are running for seats, like Kobe Dennis, who's a former mayoral candidate. He ran in 2018 for mayor, and Dave Talon, who co-chairs the Providence Republican City Committee. These seats will be up in November, so voters won't be heading to the polls for these specific races in September, but instead, again, in November. What will the money spent figures look like? These are seats that are not just a city council ward. It's a bigger area for each region, so more money and resources will likely be spent compared to council races, and almost all of them are, except for one, are multi-candidate races with 3 or more candidates running. And then one last thing to ponder about when thinking about these races is how is this going to make a difference in Providence's educational outcomes? Currently, the state takeover that started a few years ago is still present, although the steps to transition back to local control are going to start. So those are all the key races as of right now to keep an eye on this year in our state. We'll continue to keep you up to date both on air and online at WPRI.com. For now on WPRI.com, Raymond Bakari, 12 News.